So, very quick intro until we get everyone mic'd up. Today I want to talk about immigration trends. What's happening in terms of policy and processes, what are the main challenges for business and expat talent, and how to solve them. Not an easy one. Big thanks for all the three of us for joining us. Maybe we can start a quick round of intros. Burkhard, do you want to take the lead?
Yeah, my name is Burkhard. I worked nearly for 15 years for the city of Berlin, doing a lot of welcome services for bringing international talent to Berlin, set up this business immigration service. Perhaps some of you know this collaboration with the Ausländerbehörde. I just resigned from my job some weeks ago. I think we have to discuss on that, and set up my own company and trying to bridge Africa and India to the German labor market, so to bring African and Asian talent to Germany.
Hi everyone, I'm Gülsah Wilke. As you can hear from my name, I'm here third generation. My grandparents came as guest workers from Turkey to Germany. I was the first one in my family to go to university, to be born in Germany, actually also to speak fluently German. I'm an investor, advisor, and the co-founder and managing director of Two Hearts. Two Hearts is Europe's largest platform and community for culturally diverse talent in tech. So if anyone here, and I'm pretty sure, yes, has 2 or more hearts and is interested in joining us, please contact me afterwards.
I'm Julian, and I'm born and raised in Berlin, but I would consider myself a global citizen, having lived all over the world, worked all over the world, and now I'm the founder and CEO of a company called wefox. We do insurance across Europe. We have some of our rockstar HR team over there. And yeah, I'm very excited about debating about this very important topic that I believe I'm a strong believer in diversity, and I think opening up companies to the global workforce is one of the best things that happened in the last few years.
Thank you. Big thanks to all the three of us for being here. Diving right in, Burkhard, maybe starting with you here. There have been several legislative changes to encourage more skilled workers to migrate to Germany. It has been said that Germany is working on making it easier. What is your view on, is it really getting easier? What are the blockers that we're still looking at? Very honest view, please.
My honest view was that I resigned from my job, so because I'm now fighting for 5 years or whatever with the legislation and make it easier. My experience within the last year was that I think it's not the legislation which is that bad. So blue card regulation, things like that, is pretty much okay. So I always say that 9 out of 10 cases are not that complicated. It's the process, which are a very big challenge. And you mentioned it in the beginning, and I just wanted to challenge it a little bit. We are all believing in global mobility. But when you look into the institutions and the politicians, not all of them are believing in global mobility. This is what I learned, though. When you look at the last elections here in Germany, there is a trend that migration policy is something where you sort of say are discussing to stop that. And this is very often I give to your thought. Ausländerbehörden, they were part of the protection, to protect us Germans from people coming to us. So this attitude is still in some of those places to be seen. That could be in embassies, that could be in Ausländerbehörden. Not all of them are part of the solution. Some of them are part of the problem, so they don't want to make it that easy. So it's on the one hand legislation, but on the other it's attitude. How do you really would like to make it easier? So sometimes if you make an application and perhaps make a wrong cross at something, you just simply can reject the application. The other say, no, you just made it by chance on the wrong one, and I just change it or give you a call and give you the solution. So that was my experience. And Within the last 2 years, I have a little bit the experience or opinion that is changing a little bit in Europe. So there are more right-wing parties coming up. So I'm still looking forward. One example is the blue card regulation. So there is a blue card regulation nearly everywhere in Europe, but there is no blue card which is, sort of say, applicable for all over Germany. So when you have a French blue card, that doesn't mean that you can work with that easily in Germany and things like that. So that is pretty easy to do so if you would like to do so. But I think there is still some reluctance to really make it as easy as we all would like to have it.
And probably to add from my perspective, also from the people coming here, from our Two Hearts members, they say that the biggest challenges are twofold. On the one hand, it's the length of the process and the bureaucratic hurdles. So Germany is very good, and many of you will know, in asking for a lot of signatures, for a lot of information, and this is quite tiring, especially if you have young, excited people who want to found a company, etc. And the second is language. I mean, we still, and I'm not an expert in immigration law, I have to say, but what I hear is that the German language, not everyone speaks it. Definitely not when they are coming here. I mean, this is a thing that takes time, and English is not being understood by all professionals, officials in the Ausländerbehörde. So this is like a basic need. I mean, if there's someone in front of you who will decide in the end if you can stay or not, and you don't speak the same language or not that well, I mean, that's a huge challenge, yeah. So.
Julian, anything to add from your side?
Well, no, I'm just listening, and I thought it was interesting. I have more questions than answers. But what's the biggest lever to change the attitude?
I think you mentioned one thing is to make the institutions aware what's going to happen when we don't have the global mobility. You have some numbers here, sort of say, what does that mean to bring an international here? One example which came to my mind when you mentioned that is, we have the digital nomads. And I talked to the head of the Berlin immigration authorities about the digital nomads, and his clear feedback was, we don't give digital nomads a visa because they are not working for a Berlin-based employer. They are working perhaps for an American employer or for somebody else. So the feedback to local economy, Volkswirtschaft, to say what they bring in is like, it's not that much, so why we should care about them. And this is this kind of attitude. So you have to show them what is the damage for our economy if you don't bring that global talent in, if they work for a Berlin-based company or for an American company from Berlin.
I think we had a great, yesterday we were with what is a Generalsekretär of CDU, us two, for like an informal chat, and immigration was one of the big things. And I think one of the topics that came out was that in Germany, immigration is seen as something bad, as you said. We are trying to protect. And I think what we need to figure out is what are symbols that really explain to people that it's not a nice to have, but an absolute requirement to get talent in, right? And we have these abstract words like Fachkräftemangel and stuff like that that don't touch people's hearts and don't get into the head of the people that are signing the forms in the end, right? And we were talking about some type of symbolism that's, I think, also required, right? So one of the things that is done, for example, in the UK, and I'm not saying that's good or bad, but I'm just saying that could help clarify that it's really important to get the smartest people to work here, no questions asked, would be something like what they do in the UK. So they have a wide list of the best 50 universities from the world. If you have a degree from one of them, you can come, no questions asked, there's no process, nothing. You can come, you can stay for 12 months or so, you can find a job, right? So stuff like this, it might not even actually be like something that actually brings a lot of people, but it's a symbol that clearly shows there is a difference between asylum and immigration, right? So, yeah.
And in Germany, unfortunately, if you open the newspaper, Bild or whatsoever, immigrants are always associated with negative news. I mean, there are good and bad immigrants, but there are also good and bad Germans. Because violence is irrespective of borders, of skin color, etc. But sometimes there's a narrative, and I think we have to, that is very destructive to our economy, to our productivity, because innovation drives productivity and diversity drives innovation. So we need absolutely the diversity within the country. We will talk about integration, but also those coming in. And what we do at Two Hearts, I think the biggest asset we have are the diverse people, and to showcase their success stories. I mean, BioNTech with Ur and Özlem, it's just one example. I mean, it's the most famous one, but there are like hundreds other success stories that we have to keep communicating through media, through all means, and that's super important.
Yeah, integration is a super important point, because the way that I see it now with limiting immigration, they are trying to do the wrong thing, like to actually solve a problem on a different side. Like, I think they didn't invest enough in integration, and I think like now yesterday I read in the news that now they try to make it easier also for asylum seekers to get jobs, because I think like that, of course, if someone does not get a job, then there is an argument for they cost the state, etc. But they don't even want that, and I think like that's the worst. Like we did not do the right things for integration. Like people want to work, and like
Who
Germany,
doesn't want it?
like asylum seekers want to work. Like that's the thing. And like there was an argument yesterday that I think was very much around like, okay, can we maybe take the problem away with making it easier, faster access? Like we wanted to hire someone who was stuck, I think, in Ulm for 10 months. We wanted to employ him, but because he was sitting somewhere in a Flüchtlingsheim, we could not. And giving people faster access to work, I think like that is really taking away a bigger part. But I would love to hear your point, because like integration, I think like we didn't do integration right. I think like if we had done that, we wouldn't have that debate on immigration right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we talked about it yesterday. I always like to give the example of my grandparents, right? They came in the 60s as guest workers, and the only reason for them coming was work. Yeah. So right from day zero, actually, they were prepared for work. I mean, they worked very hard, 12 hours a day, probably not the best working conditions. That's a separate topic, but they worked. And if I today talk with my granddad, he's 80 years old, yeah? And he talks about his work at the production factory at Ford, his eyes shine. For him, his friends, his neighbors, everyone was there. Not only Turkish, but German. And I always say, work is creating identity. So the most efficient thing to do is to require and invite, it's both, everyone coming here, irrespective of their status, to work, to be part of our economy, to contribute. And that is such a pity that in your case it didn't work, and there are probably hundreds of thousands other examples like this. Yeah.
Perhaps a little bit of a challenge again in this integration perspective from a policy point of view. So I think you can't expect this old immigration outlook nowadays. Nobody knows what's coming up in 3 to 5 years. Our politicians still think that immigration has something to do with people coming to Germany, stay there forever, learn German language and become Germans once a time. I think you mentioned that on global mobility, this will change. I think not for everybody, but as long as we see that immigration policy is always an integration policy, and that those people sort of say have the final aim to become Germans with German language and behave like us, that's not how we should look on it. So if somebody is coming for 1 year, welcome. Then you pitch for him to stay longer. If that person is staying there for 20 years, fine. If that person is moving on to the next place, that's...
Yeah, very true. But also, even if someone is only staying 12 months, you can integrate them if you make it easier. Like, for example, German, like having German as a language requirement, like making it only possible for someone to live in Germany comfortable if they speak German, like that shouldn't be the case. But yeah, also talking about attracting people and like the view that we're creating, Julian, from a perspective as a CEO, as someone who built up a company, what are you seeing? How much does it get easier or more difficult to attract international talent? What other blockers are you seeing there?
Well, I think first of all, we need to be aware of the attractiveness of Germany and Europe in the global context, and I think we need to be a little bit more self-confident, especially talking to Americans, where in tech there's probably the best talent in the world. There's a huge momentum right now of very, very talented people, very experienced people, very senior people that say, for life quality purposes, I want to move to Europe. So I think this is a great opportunity, right? And at the same time, speaking to my team, there's a lot of difficulties. We've just hired, and this is very senior people, but we've just hired a CFO from New York. And the amount of effort we have to put into him getting a visa, and for 3 months now finding kind of an interim solution on how he's able to work somehow through a consulting agreement, and it's just incredible. I mean, this is one of the best CFOs in the industry. Like, Europe should be so happy that this person has chosen to relocate with their family, and yet they make it so difficult, right? And on a day-to-day basis, the feedback that I'm receiving is, it takes 3 months for a visa. There is this level of uncertainty. There is this, obviously, person that's not getting paid. If there's a mistake on the form, it's prolonged, right? There's one specific case where the process took 6 months, and the other person just got tired of it and couldn't afford it, quite frankly, because they didn't get any salary for 6 months, and decided not to join, right? So I think we have a great opportunity, we have great momentum to get the best talents, and that's mainly due to life quality in Europe that's above anywhere else. But we need to act in order to make it simpler, easier.
Yeah. After attracting people, there also comes the retention part. Gülsah, would love to hear your view on that. We talked already about integration in general, but right now I think Berlin's still maybe a place where you can survive for some time without German, but like even there, and I think like that is one factor. But there's other factors that make it harder for someone to be happy in Germany for long term. What are your views on that, and what can we do?
Yeah, great question, and a difficult one. I don't have the single solution, but I would say the first thing is feeling welcome. So I was very happy to hear that there is someone like you and your organization welcoming. And I have to say, Germany is not the most welcoming country. I was born here, so no one to blame, right? I'm part of that. I think it's twofold. On the one hand, when people come here, the language thing is it's like a wall. Right away, it's all German, and they're like, oh wow, okay, and it's beyond Berlin, obviously. The second is, once they keep staying here, they see the image of immigrants in the minds of many, many people, in the media, etc., and it's quite negative. Again, I have to say the narrative has to change about positivity, about why we need these great talent, why we need the CFO, but also on more junior levels. So I think we have to work on these two things, and the feedback we get from our Tour Hearts members is, they say, and it's a bit emotional, but they say it's the first time that they feel a community, a safe space, where they can be just themselves, where their difference, their migration background is not a minus, but it's an asset. And I think this feeling that we are creating within the Tour Hearts community with thousands of members in Europe, we have to create in Germany as a country. And this works through positive examples, communication, and language.
Yeah, perhaps one thing to add, we've done a lot of research in Europe, and for example in Scandinavia, that dual career service, the spouse services from public side, is very popular. So that helps pretty much to make people stay. If there is somebody caring about family, to find a job for the spouse, kindergarten and things like that. So in Germany, it's nearly not known from a public side that there is any kind of a spouse service. We had one in Berlin. It was stopped after 2 years because there was no financing, because there was no no idea how easy that is. Just really to have 3 to 4 people just caring about spouses and having workshops with them and doing this kind of onboarding in a city.
Yeah.
So there's you can all do the onboarding in a company, but to really help to welcome them in the city is easy. It's not expensive, but it brings so much positive narrative to those people coming.
And one thing that is very close to my heart, I want to say that if we talk about integration, we shouldn't only look at those that come in nowadays, right? The first generation. I mean, I quoted it yesterday, every third child or young person under 20 has a migration background. That's like more than 13 million. Already today, every fourth German is a migrant. So we are an immigration country, just as the US. But we still don't perceive it as such. And we have to make sure that especially these kids who overproportionally come from underprivileged backgrounds, where it takes 180 years or 5 generations to come to a middle class, that these kids are also being taken, supported, and integrated by role models, by mentors, by systems that are more durchlässig, I don't know the English word, that are allowing more to go to certain industries, to go to certain schools, etc. So if we talk about integration, let's not forget about the second, third generation, because there's also a lot of challenges and things to do.
Maybe now, giving everything a bit of a positive spin, what can we do, especially for companies and governments to work together? I think like now we have a lot of people here who work within companies, who work with internationals, with expats they're bringing in. You mentioned that we need the role models, we need to change the narrative. What do you think are the things that we can do to like get more publicity for the positive cases, to really like change the sentiment in Germany?
Well, the first thing is symbolism from politicians, right? I mean, what we need is the chancellor clearly stating that we are open to welcome the smartest and best talent from all around the world, and Germany being a welcoming place, and explaining to the German society why this is required for continuous prosperity of our country, right? So symbolism, like Macron does it, and this has an effect, right? People thinking about changing jobs, moving to Europe, they think of Macron being the first one saying, people all around the world, from the US, everywhere, come here. And I will personally, give an effort for you guys to be welcomed and to have great opportunities for you and your family, right? So it starts at the very, very top with clear symbolic statements that then trickle down. Because I think the bottom up, I mean, it's a great example. You're coming with all the right intentions. You're working hard and you feel you're running against a wall over and over again. It needs to go top down.
So I traveled a lot in Africa the last year. Angela Merkel is still a symbol. Very positive image from her. So her work was received as Germany is welcoming people. So
we might now argue there are some challenges, but yes, I agree.
But when you talk to the people, so what will you think about Germany? Then
it just shows the power of symbols, right?
So I do not know whether everything was fine, but just as so, I'm always looking for. I'm naming a CTO, a Chief Talent Officer, really at a high level politician going out and promoting Germany as a country where talents are welcome. On the other hand, you always have to be aware that people coming from foreign countries are no voters. They cannot participate in elections. So there is sometimes less purpose or sort of say need for politicians to go for them because they do not vote for them. So this is where it starts. So if those people could be part in the election schemes, then there are more sort of be seen on that level. So as easy as it is, so.
And I think it's super important to also underline the urgency. I mean, until 2030, we are missing more than 7 million skilled workers. You can translate that into real money. Our society is aging, and someone has to pay for our rente, for our pensions, right? I mean, this is like simple maths. And I think every politician can bring that across as something very urgent, where we simply need the best and brightest to keep, as Julian said, our prosperity. And the second thing we can do, and I think companies like wefox are super important. That's why we at Two Hearts focus on the tech community or on the tech industry, companies, especially and an entire industry, can be also the forerunner for like those that are the first pioneers to show, hey, we have so much different talent and it's working, and that's a secret of our success. I will give you an example. I worked for a super German corporate in the heart of Berlin, the biggest employer, and I was the only Turkish person, not only in senior management, like reporting into the board, like literally everywhere. And I was like, all the cab drivers, all the restaurants are owned by Turkish people. I mean, why is that? There are no Turkish people in this entire company. And I was like, probably they're all stupid or they didn't study. They are not there, right? And then I switched to a scale-up with like 450 employees. And within these 450 employees, we had 55 nationalities. Versus with 10,000 employees, 10 that you didn't even see, yeah, the nationalities. I mean, that's the point I'm making. I think we really need companies like wefox that serve as role models and show, hey, this is working, to inspire Daimler, Allianz, and all the big players.
Yeah, I love that. There's one number that with Germany, within the last year, we grew with 200,000 jobs. All jobs were placed by foreigners. Nobody's stealing that. On the other hand, we have an institution like the Bundesagentur für Arbeit. Just learned that they have 120,000 employees. Within the next 5 years, 30,000 of them are retiring. And if they are going to hiring internationals, then that it would make it easier, because then you have the right people at the right place and speeding up those kind of processes. So this is where I have a look on, is the Bundesagentur Arbeit really going for hiring internationally, because they know that the 35,000 people retiring, they cannot replace them by Germans.
And I think one of the things that we really need to be able to manage is split the discussion into our social responsibility when it comes to asylum and our economic response or interests when it comes to immigration of highest skilled labor, right? And we're mixing it up, right? The asylum discussion has a negative impact on the skilled labor discussion and vice versa. So we really have to make sure that we are able to disconnect the two, right? Because we have a soziale Marktwirtschaft, I don't know what it is called, and it combines the two, right? It's something special about Germany. We are social, but we also have a prospering economy. Let's disconnect these two items from each other.
I would probably argue, I think it's good to initially disconnect them now until we have the narrative of immigration is good, we need it. I think ultimately, because also, as I mentioned, asylum seekers, they also want to work. So I think ultimately it would be ideal if we could combine them in a positive way. But I agree, I think like first to change the narrative, that is something, but still, even if we look at skilled migration, it's something that I don't see as very, very visible right now in the media. A lot of people, like Fachkräftemangel, that is something that people talk about, but then they talk a lot about we need to upskill people, and like somehow this is not connected yet. What is your view? Like, what can we change there? I think like we've talked about role models, also as companies, maybe there is something that we can do to lobby for that, to give it more visibility.
I mean, very practically, my experience within a company and beyond, to get in more diverse people in countries, you need companies, you need to have on the top these diverse people. The CFO from New York, the Turkish COO in my case, or Turkish-German COO, because we talk with a lot of companies, VCs, PEs, also big corporates. They're like, Gülsah, Gülsah or Two Hearts, we're trying to hire more culturally diverse talent, but somehow they don't apply to us, or we don't find them. And I'm like, well, one thing is employer branding and talking how diverse you are, and the other thing is they then look into the decision maker level, partners, C-level, VPs, SVPs, and know all white male guys. And in worst case, even if they are quite old. I mean, no. I mean, my biggest mentors were like this, but we need, as in everything in life, we need a mixture, we need the diversity. So I always say the best way to hire more diverse people and to be more successful in that case is to actually live that, to make the first move, to break the cycle, to hire a partner, to hire a CEO, to hire a to have a senior politician that looks different, because this will inspire many others to follow. And this is the easiest thing you can do, basically. And the tech industry, as we learned from Julian, is doing that already, but many other companies in Germany are not.
And probably also institutions, like you mentioned the example of the Arbeitsamt, but also in an Ausländerbehörde, like you don't have a lot of foreigners working there probably.
Yes, I think they make a diversity training 5 years ago. I don't want to blame them though. They have a lot of good people, but this is a German organization. I think there might some migrant backgrounds of the employees in those institutions, but all those institutions dealing with global mobility are very German companies, and if they don't have their, so to say, diverse employees, that will make an impact on how they are dealing with the topic.
Yeah, because I mean, I always say you can't be what you can't see. I mean, why should I dare to go to this big corporate or start a role if anyone above looks differently and I have ambitions? This doesn't inspire me. I mean, it just doesn't. And people need inspiration. People, especially young people, need inspiration, need a vision, need something that pulls them. Because in the global talent war, the best ones, the brightest minds, they can decide where to go. They don't have to go to Germany. They can go in the meanwhile now to China, to India, to the US, to France, whatsoever. So I think we have to change the narrative and say we have to fight to get the best.
I think we need to go a few levels deeper and then try to figure out why are these places not diverse. And the reason is, so we know diversity brings better outcome. I mean, there's no question about that, right? But also, it's really uncomfortable. Right? It requires you to open up, to show vulnerability. It requires personal growth, right? And I think it's much more around taking the people by the hand and explaining them the value of diversity, the value of moving out of their comfort zone, the value of listening to different opinions, and integrating and not judging, right?
Yes. I just learned from 2 examples. They applied for public service from outside. The recognition process of university degrees within the public organization took months. They do not, so all the HR competences here, you have to expect that there is no HR competence in a Behörde. And if they judge any kind of a Indian diploma, and then they have the Tarifsystem and how to put them in the Tarifsystem if you don't accept this diploma. So it's, even by the process, super complicated to apply for a job and to get into that system. So this is really where I think there must be the change in the institution, that they are open and say, no, that's not that complicated.
I think I have a great example. My brother-in-law, he's a neurosurgeon, born in Georgia, and studied in Russia. Then he moved with his family to the UK, and he was one of the most senior neurosurgeons in all of the UK. He was running a clinic, right? And then they decided to move to Germany, and the process is so complicated and so confusing to get acknowledgement of I mean, maybe Russia is not the best place now currently, but to get the certification and the translation that he has decided, because it's just too difficult and too confusing, to move to Georgia and leave his family here, and now they're seeing each other every 3 months, right?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And he speaks German, and he lives in Germany now for 6 or 7 years already.
And again, this is not the legislation where we started with. This is process, and there's this attitude, so to say, how complicated we would like to make it. I think the law is not that bad, so it's all in there, mostly, and it's just how quick. And one short remark, I just spoke to a diplomat, and he said, 12 weeks of a process, why are you complaining? That's pretty fast. It's also a matter of perspective.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we can all agree that we want to change things. Maybe to wrap it up, curious to know what big goal you have for 2024 to also inspire this audience to close on a positive remark.
I mean, for me, it's to build two hearts to a global home for culturally diverse talent in tech, to showcase globally, especially within Germany, the power of having two hearts, and underlining that having two hearts is not a minus, but it's an asset, and that's my biggest goal.
We have very big goals with wefox, and what I always say is the goals that we have, they're just words. We're never going to achieve them if we don't have a culture that allows every single one to get to their full potential. So my goal is to continue to work on creating a culture where everyone feels safe, where everyone has the possibility to grow, and diversity is something that is promoted by every single part of the company and acknowledged as something that makes each one of us better.
Yeah, I changed to the private sector, and I try to make more pressure on public institutions than I could make it from a public side. So to really be a pain in their ass to get things done more quicker. And I just set up my new company, and this is I try to bridge German Mittelstand with talent from Africa and Asia, and to make German Mittelstand more diverse. So that would be my dream.
Thank you. Big thanks to all the three of us. Applause. I really think that was a very insightful panel.